While the Tampa Bay Buccaneers finished 2-14 and earned the right to have the #1 overall pick in the 2015 NFL Draft, I don't actually think they were the worst team in the National Football League. I actually believe fully that the worst team in the National Football League in 2014 throughout the entirety of the season has to be the Tennessee Titans. And surely this was not what was envisioned by this organization when they went out and got a head coach with previous Super Bowl experience, both as a coordinator and as a head coach, and a guy that had just spent some time working with Philip Rivers and helped Philip Rivers experience a late career resurgence in his performance with the San Diego Chargers. When they brought in Ken Wisenhunt, I'm sure this isn't the type of 2014 season that the Titans organization and the Titans fan base envisioned, but this is frankly the one they got. And I talked about this team before the season, and I said that they really had no answer at quarterback. I questioned their switch to a 3-4 defense and their lack of willingness and ability to get personnel for that new defense because they did not have the personnel in place. And the fact that this organization, frankly, has absolutely zero identity of any kind on either side of the ball. If you say Tennessee Titans, I say I say Tennessee Titans, you say, uh, and that's a problem. That's a significant problem. And when you look at this Titans team in 2014, after the first week, they beat Kansas City. In fact, they dominated them pretty good. I believe it was 26-10 was the final score. And, Titans fans were thinking, hey, maybe Wisenhunt's going to get more out of this team. Maybe they're not that good, but they'll be better. They'll at least be competitive. And it just really didn't happen that way. The last 15 games of the season, they went 1-14. In fact, the only other victory of the year that they had was a midseason victory over a bad Jaguars team where they had to block a field goal at the end in order to win. It was a bad year for the Titans. This, to me, was the worst team throughout 2014. Look at them offensively. 30th in points scored, 22nd in rushing yards, 26th in passing yards. They couldn't move the ball. They couldn't score points on a consistent basis. Part of that comes from not having the answer at quarterback between Locker and Whitehurst and even Mettenberger. Part of that comes from not having much in the way of a running game, and in particular, no consistency in the approach of trying to establish a running game, and that falls on the head coach, Ken Wisenhunt, in the play calling. But you look at this team defensively, too. They had exactly what I said they had, a lack of personnel to fit that new 3-4 defense. And it showed 29th in the league in points allowed, 27th in the league in total yards allowed. This team was terrible on offense, and they were terrible on defense. They were just a terrible football team. And some of the other numbers indicate this as well. They had 9 losses by over 14 points. Where I talked about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers weren't as bad as maybe you thought because they had 8 losses by 7 points or less. The Tennessee Titans lost more than 8 games. They lost 9 games by 2+ touchdown totals. 9 losses by 14+ points. That means that you're getting dominated, that you're not really in games, and you're just a step or two below everybody else. They had 6 games defensively where they allowed 30+ points. They had 5 games offensively where they scored 10 points or less. What does that equate to? That equates to the 2-14 record and the second overall pick that the Tennessee Titans have in the 2015 NFL Draft. And even when you look back at the offseason, you look at the losses of guys like David Stewart and Alteron Werner and Chris Johnson. You might have said some of that was a necessity, some of that was going to happen. But, you look at Alteron Werner, why did you not retain him? You knew you were going to need help on the defensive side of the ball. You really didn't have a replacement for him in place. Maybe you didn't feel like he was a big-time corner, but you need somebody. You need something there. I just really didn't get the Titans' philosophy in the offseason, both in terms of free agent moves and with the draft itself. You look at the additions they had, guys like Dexter McCluster and Michael Orr and Wesley Woodyard. It almost seemed like in a way that this organization was intentionally trying to bottom out, or this organization was just trying to really set themselves up long-term as players in the free agent market, or this organization foolishly believed that they were in a much better position than they really were. I'm not sure which of those 3 it is. It could be any one of them or a combination of them. But the bottom line is the moves they made in the offseason sucked. Plain and simple. You fired Mike Munchak after a few seasons because the team disappointed and underwhelmed. Now you bring in a guy with Super Bowl experience and you go 2-14 and you decide to help out that new coach by bringing in guys like Dexter McCluster, Michael Orr, and Wesley Woodyard. You ain't winning anything when those guys are your big time moves in the offseason. And even when you look at the draft Taylor Lewan, the offensive tackle from Michigan. When he got his opportunity, he started to play a little bit better, and then, of course, he got hurt, so he missed, like, the second half of the season. Bishop Sankey was the first running back taken in the draft, and I'm not really sure why. And even at occasional moments, he showed an occasional flash here or there, but this Titans offensive line, which is something you would have thought would have been better under Wisenhunt, really didn't play all that well, especially in the running game. And Sankey really, frankly, lacks a burst, and I don't think he's a big-time NFL running back. I really don't. You look at this draft class, and in a lot of ways, I could say the guy that they got the most out of was a player I liked coming out of Kentucky. That seventh-round pick at inside linebacker Avery Williamson. When you could maybe argue that the best pick you had was a seventh-round pick, that's a bad thing. Even Mettenberger, he got his shot as a sixth-round pick, a guy that I envision having first- or second-round talent. He didn't play very well either. He showed himself to not be the answer long-term. This is a Tennessee Titans team, whereas I see the Buccaneers on a huge upswing going forward and with tremendous potential for immediate turnaround. I just don't see that with the Tennessee Titans. This is a bad team with needs just about everywhere. So what do the Titans need to address this offseason? First and foremost, they have to find a guy at quarterback. I'll laugh my ass off if they trade for Jay Cutler, trying to go with the whole Tennessee Vanderbilt connection. Good luck to you. But they need to sit there and find that quarterback, wherever that may be. Free agent market, trade market, preferably for them through the NFL draft in the first round. Look. If you're Wisenhunt, I know your MO is not necessarily as a head coach to want to work with young quarterbacks. With that said, though, the only chance you have for long-term survival in Tennessee as a head coach is going to be with a young quarterback. And whether that ends up being Marcus Mariota, whether that ends up being Jameis Winston, who would probably be the better fit in Tennessee, they need somebody. They need that young franchise savior. They need that guy to build around like they once had in Steve McNair. Because once they lost Steve McNair, and once things went bad with Vince Young in part because of Jeff Fisher as well, this organization just frankly hasn't been the same. They have to find that guy. There are two types of teams in the NFL. The teams that have that guy and the teams that don't have that guy. And the best way to ensure future success and begin that path to building a championship team is by having that guy. The number one sole priority for this Titans organization in this offseason is that they finally move on from Jake Locker and they go find that guy. They must. They do not have a choice. They have other needs too. They need to find personnel to be able to run that 3-4 defense. They have a stud in Jarrell Casey. There's no question about that. To me, one of the more underrated defensive players in all of the National Football League. I love watching this guy play, and I've been very impressed with how he's transitioned so well to the 3-4 defense. But there really ain't shit around him. This is a team that struggled to generate pressure off of the edges. Their secondary is not very good. So they need help all over the place in the back half of that defense, in particular on the outside at linebacker and at the cornerback position. They could use some offensive line help. They could use another big wide receiver on the outside, so that way if you get Justin Hunter to come back healthy and you have another big wide receiver here for a young franchise quarterback, Kendall Wright coming out of the slot, Delaney Walker at tight end, you've actually got a nice set of weapons for what Ken Wisenhunt wants to do with his vertical passing attack. They have to find these things. They have to begin the process of rebuilding this team, because this is a team with no answer at quarterback, that can't move the ball, can't score points offensively, can't stop anybody defensively, can't create any pressure defensively, and has absolutely no identity. More than anything else, even more so than just a quarterback in this offseason, the Tennessee Titans need to find themselves and find some type of identity to establish it, and build off of it going forward.